Here we have a tiny snail sitting on a little mushroom. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about sex-linked characteristics or sex-linked traits, okay? So first off, let's just get into it. Here we have a famous guy. Maybe you don't know him if you're not into sports, but this is Michael Phelps. And we're going to look at his cells, okay? We're going to zoom right in because we know he's made up of billions of cells. And then we're going to look into his nucleus because we know that is where all of his DNA is stored in the form of chromosomes. Now, this is a tiny image, so let's just make it bigger and see it more clearly. So here we have the same image made bigger. We know that our chromosomes is responsible for determining all of our traits, determining the way we look, right? So we know as humans we have 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs because we know each pair, one is from the mom and one is from the dad, right? Now, here are two important words you need to know: autosomes and sex chromosomes. So autosomes is the name describing all the chromosomes from pair 1 to pair 22, whereas sex chromosomes is the name describing the last pair, the X and the Y chromosomes. So we know he's a male, so obviously he has an X and a Y chromosome. The Y chromosome, notice, it's far, far smaller than the X one. So having X and Y makes you a male. On the contrary, having X and X makes you a female, okay? Now, all of these chromosomes all do a different thing. They all code for a different characteristic. In this video, we're gonna see what specific characteristics are coded for by the sex chromosomes, okay? And what diseases you can get if you don't, if you have a problem in your DNA, okay? So which disease are we gonna talk about? We're gonna talk about a specific disease called red-green color blindness, and then we'll talk about another disease called hemophilia. You need to know both of these for the IB, okay? So, but it's fine. It will be quite simple. So here we have, okay? So I just showed you what it means to be a male and a female, okay? Now remember, chromosomes have different locuses, okay? These little bands, and these little bands correspond to a different trait. So for example, let's say we're looking at this band. This band will do one thing, whereas this band will code for another thing. And then this band will code for even another thing, okay? So all of these bands have different codes, different purposes, okay? So when you have a specific characteristic that is found on an X chromosome, we call it a sex-linked characteristic because it is linked to the sex chromosome, okay? The sex chromosomes, the X and the Y chromosomes. But when it is linked not to the Y chromosome, but only to the X chromosome, then we call it X-linked. So these sound pretty similar, sex-linked and X-linked, okay? Just be careful of that. But now, yeah, let's just get into the disease that you need to know. So luckily for most people, we can see color very well, all the colors of the rainbow, right? And we take it for granted sometimes. But there are some people who can see no color at all, okay? But then there are other people who can only see, who have trouble seeing some colors. For example, the red-green color blindness, these people have trouble distinguishing between the shades of red and green, okay? And basically, there are different extremes of this disease. So some people have no ability to distinguish between red and green, whereas others can only have trouble with some shades of green and some shades of red. So it can be extreme depending on, it can be of different extremities, okay? Sometimes it's very bad, sometimes it's not so bad. For example, I have red-green color blindness, but a very mild version. So there are some scenarios in which I struggle to distinguish between red and green. Let me show you. Here we have a test that can show you if you also have red or green color blindness. Okay, so what normal people see. So normal people can see a number on each of these circles. I can only see a number on this one and this one. So 25 and 56. I cannot see any numbers on this one, or that one. To give you a feel of what people with red-green color blindness would see here, I'm going to show you this image. So this is what a person with red-green color blindness sees. Okay, they can see these two numbers as I mentioned, but they cannot see any of these. Okay, so now that you have an idea of what it means to have red-green color blindness, let's describe how you can get this disease and how it's coded in our DNA. So coming back to the chromosomes, okay, the male and the female. We're going to make a hypothetical situation here. So let's say that this spot, this locus right here on the X chromosomes is where the ability to see red and green is coded for, okay? This spot. So notice that the Y chromosome doesn't have this spot, only the X chromosome. So we know that each trait, you can get one gene from your mom and one from your dad, right? So if you're a female, one of the chromosomes came from your dad and one came from your mom. Now, having two variations of a gene is called an allele. So you have two alleles, one from your mom, one from your dad. Now, in the case of red-green color blindness, there are two alleles. One is dominant and one is recessive. The green one is dominant. Obviously, I'm making up these colors just to make it clear. But when I say green one, I mean this. So because it's a sex-linked condition, we make a big X, okay? Because it's sex-linked. If it's the dominant allele, we make it a big G. If it's the recessive allele, we give it a small g. So if you have the dominant allele, so the green one, this means you can see normally. You do not have a problem. You have the normal dominant gene, okay? If you have the recessive one, then it means you may have a red-green color blindness problem. But this person here, okay, has both of the alleles. And we know when you have a dominant and a recessive alleles together, the dominant one is going to mask the recessive one. So this means that because this person has both the alleles, because they have the dominant one, the recessive one doesn't even matter. So they can see as normal. Okay, and so here we have another example of a male, and we can see he has one allele, okay? And because this allele is the dominant one, he can see as normal, okay? So he will see normally as well. So my question is now, how can you get the problem? How can you get red-green color blindness? So I'm going to show you here a scenario. So here we have one parent and the other parent. So the mom and the dad and the mom. So let's say this is what your dad's genetics is, okay? So at this locus, your dad has the recessive allele. So he has this going on, okay? He has this, okay? And then he has the Y chromosome because the Y chromosome doesn't have an allele for this one. And then your mom, let's say your mom is completely normal. She has both the dominant alleles, okay? Both the X capital G alleles. So what can the kids have? So let's see what will happen. Let's say the dad, because we know each parent can only pass on one chromosome, right? Otherwise the kids would have double the chromosomes from normal. So let's say the dad passes on this one and the mom passes on this one. What are we going to get? We're going to get X capital G and X small g. Because there's a dominant allele with a recessive allele, the dominant allele will overpower. And so this person will be normal. Okay, but because they have this recessive allele, we call them a carrier. So they have the normal phenotype, so they can see normally, but they still have this recessive type. So we call them a carrier because they have the potential to give their kid this recessive allele in the future. Now let's look at the next scenario. Let's say the dad passes on the Y chromosome and the mom passes on this dominant chromosome. We know because the dad passes on the Y that this is going to be a boy because it's XY. And because the mom passed on the dominant allele, the kid will be normal. It will have normal vision, normal color vision. Let's look at another example here. What if the dad passes on this recessive allele and the mom passes on this one? So that's the same as the one we saw here, right? So the kid, the daughter specifically, because it's X and X, will be a carrier, okay? They will be normal, but they still carry this recessive allele. And then the last scenario, which is the same as this one, we call normal. So far we still don't know how you can receive this problem, how you can become colorblind. So let's look at another example. But first I want to show you some messages that you can take away from this. boys can only get sex-linked traits from their mom. Since they always get one Y chromosome from their dad, the X chromosome has to be from the mom. So notice, yeah, to be a boy, you need a Y chromosome. You can only get your Y chromosome from your dad. So the only way a boy can get this problem, this red-green color problem, is if the mom were to pass on a recessive allele, if the mom was a carrier or had the disease, okay? So what's a carrier? So a girl, this is a complicated sentence, so I'm just gonna say it in simple terms. So if a girl carries both versions of the allele, so that means they're heterozygous because they carry both the recessive and the dominant. This makes them a carrier, okay? And a carrier never expresses the disease, so they are normal, okay? So let's look at another scenario. Let's say your dad has the disease and your mom is a carrier. So remember, your mom is a carrier, meaning she doesn't have the disease, but she still carries this trait. And because she carries it, we call it a carrier because she can give it to her kid in the future. So let's see what options. Let's say the dad gives his recessive allele and the mom gives a recessive allele. Now we have a girl, XX, that is going to be colorblind because she has both the recessive alleles. There is no dominant allele, and so she will be colorblind. How about the boy? So the boy will get the Y from the dad and the recessive allele from the mom. And because the boy has to have a Y chromosome, they can't have two X chromosomes. Just by having one recessive allele, they will be colorblind because they have to express this X chromosome. Okay, so that's interesting. Now what else can happen? The dad can pass on the recessive allele and the mom can pass on the dominant allele, and the girl will be a carrier. And the last example could be the dad passes on the Y chromosome and the mom passes on this allele, and then the son is normal. So we can see when these two parents have kids, many things are possible. You can have a girl that's colorblind, a boy that's colorblind, a girl that's a carrier, or a normal boy. So many things are possible with this combination. So what can we take away from this? One more. So for a girl to get a sex-linked trait, so for a girl to be able to be colorblind, both of the parents must possess a recessive allele, okay? Specifically, this means that the dad has to have the problem because we know a male only needs one X chromosome, recessive chromosome, to have the problem. So for a girl to have a problem, so say you're a girl, for you to get the problem, it means your dad has to have the problem. So if your dad doesn't have the problem, if your dad is not red-green colorblind, that means it's impossible for you to get it. It's impossible for you to get it. Okay, so the only way you can get it as a girl is if your dad has the problem and your mom is a carrier or has the problem. Okay, so it's pretty difficult for a girl to get it. Now, if the mom has the disease, the boys will always get the disease. Okay, so let's say the mom has the disease, so she has both recessive alleles. When this happens, the boys will get the disease because the boys will get the Y chromosome from dad and then the X chromosome will be from mom. And if both X chromosomes are, if the mom has two recessive X alleles, then the son will have the problem, okay? So that's another thing that can be taken away from this. So it's really quite interesting how this works, okay? So that's why you can see it's far more likely for a boy to get a sex-linked problem than a girl, okay? And by the way, so around 1 in 12 men have this problem, 1 in 12, okay? So it's fairly common actually, it's not that rare. Okay, so now we gotta quickly talk about another example, okay? But I'm gonna go quickly over this one because it uses the exact same concept as what we just talked about for red-green color blindness. Okay, so hemophilia. Hemophilia is a disease in which you cannot stop bleeding. So when you cut yourself, you bleed for a very long time. Your body is unable to clot. It is unable to clot the blood to prevent bleeding. That's what hemophilia means, okay? And remember how we just talked about that this locus was responsible for the red-green color blindness. Now we're talking about another place. This place is now responsible, this locus is responsible for making you be able to clot your blood properly, okay? So let's quickly show this again. So there's two alleles, a dominant and a recessive, right? We'll make the dominant one blue and the recessive one yellow. And we'll write it as X because it's X-linked, and we'll give it a capital H if you're normal, and a small h for the recessive allele. Okay, so I'm quickly going to go over these scenarios. Let's say this is your dad's scenario, this is your mom's scenario. What can happen? Have a guess at these. So I'm not going to explain these because they're the exact same as the example above. Try it by yourself, and again, take away the same tips that I gave here. Okay, they apply. It's the same thing. It's just a different disease. It's a different locus. Same concept, different locus on the chromosome. Okay, and here's another example. Take away, and you call the person who has this problem a hemophiliac, okay? A hemophiliac. This is a very bad disease to get. So I hope this makes sense. This is everything you need to know about sex-linked traits, okay? And there are many other diseases besides the ones I just mentioned, so don't think that these are all, okay?